Hello and welcome to the Explore NBS with Experts webinar. This webinar is part of Exploring Nature-Based Solutions in Your Classroom MOOC hosted on European SchoolNet Academy. My name is Jelena Milenkovic. You know me as your course coordinator, and you know me as well as the European SchoolNet Academy coordinator. First of all, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited to hear from our experts, and I'm sure that you will get a lot of great ideas on how to implement nature-based solutions in your classroom, as well as in your nature-based solution learning scenarios. A special thanks, of course, goes to our speakers, Bettina Wilk, Jonathan Porter, and Simone Bénateau. We will start today with the presentations. If time allows, we will leave some minutes at the end to answer some questions. If you have any questions for our speakers, feel free to share them in the chat below, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. And now, without further ado, and as the name of this webinar and this course suggests, let's start exploring NBS. Bettina.
Everyone can hear me and everything's all right. Can you just quickly confirm?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Bettina Wilk and I work for ICLE Europe, which is a city network. And there I work mostly on projects related to nature-based solutions and biodiversity, several of them funded by the European Commission. And here we have a very strong focus actually on local governments and also municipalities, and help them on the way to designing, implementing, and also evaluating the impacts of nature-based solutions. So today we're actually here to share a few resources with you, some resources and tools that are suited for you to use in the classroom that are coming from what we call the nature-based solutions community. Not only the projects I'm working on, but an umbrella of all different projects on nature-based solutions. And I'm going to start with a quick recap. So what we understand as nature-based solutions, there are several definitions around, and I gather that there might be some confusion as with regards to the different focus they put. We usually orient ourselves on the definition from the European Commission that defines nature-based solutions as those solutions that are inspired and also supported by nature. Important that they are cost effective in the first place. That means that they should have lower costs than comparable grey solutions, such as infrastructure solutions, such as dams and dikes, for instance. And also they provide usually several what we call co-benefits. And those are not only environmental, but also social and economic. They can help us build resilience, and they can also provide several benefits for biodiversity and healthy ecosystems. So what are nature-based solutions? So really there's a quite broad range that we define as nature-based solutions, starting from wilderness or letting wilderness and nature grow in front of your doorstep, as you see here on the left side in a private garden, but also in public parks, for example, as you see here on the right side, to methods for soil decontamination. So we also apply nature-based solutions on post-industrial areas where they actually filter contamination out of the soil. Other examples are restored or almost newly created ecosystems with natural features. As you can see here on the left side, that will be an urban wetland that has been constructed and reconstructed, or a more artificial ecosystem here on the right side where you have a lake with a recreational area. Onto green corridors and urban trees, but also those solutions that actually require more expertise from different other actors and are more specialized, such as vertical green, for example, as you can see here, the green facades on the left side, or green roofs. So what are now these real world problems that we can tackle with nature-based solutions? There are several of them, and I will go briefly through them. So first of all, health and well-being. Everyone knows that contact with nature provides us with health benefits, both physical health as well as mental health benefits. So being out there in nature is good for us and improves our health and well-being. Then biodiversity enhancement through specific design and management of urban green spaces. Biodiversity can be enhanced and improved. Water management, through the filtering function of nature-based solutions, you can create a better quality of fresh water, but also coastal resilience and climate resilience. And here we think about the many benefits, for example, that mangroves or restored mangroves or also dunes with a natural vegetation can offer as a buffer for any climate-related events or extreme weather events, also then bringing tidal waves, for example. Also, the reduction of heat island effect would go into this category through the cooling function and shading functions of nature-based solutions. Also, they provide new economic opportunities, obviously along the different phases that they have, from design, planning to implementation, but also evaluating the real impacts that they have. Sorry. Now there was a mistake here. Just give me a second. Yeah, there was an intervention. I can continue, right? You should see it again.
Yes,
all right?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
No worries at all. Also, air quality. Obviously, nature-based solutions can filter air and improve air quality, especially in cities. This is also very relevant. And then social justice and social cohesion. So usually what we do is that we co-create nature-based solutions that bring several advantages. It has a higher level of identification of the solution itself that is being implemented. And it also brings more ownership over a certain solution that kind of safeguards as well that solutions are being maintained and managed into the future. And the last point that I'd like to point out here is also participatory planning and governance, and we'll come to that in just a bit. So whose responsibility is it really to design and implement nature-based solutions? To be honest with you, it's a joint effort. It's a joint effort of many, many different stakeholders working across different sectors and fields if we want to tackle that many challenges that I've just presented, and if we want to harness its co-benefits. A few examples here. We've got public and private landowners that have got natural spaces on their private or public land. Those that manage those spaces, that could be water, forest, or land managers, land use managers. But also infrastructure planning and implementation. And here we've got a wide array of stakeholders, such as not only urban and regional planners in the municipal departments, but also developers, any kind of engineers that are involved in providing services and products around the design and implementation of nature-based solutions. But also the finance and investment sector, since actually we want to move away from public funding, actually, public finance, to more blended finance, and also involve the private sector so that we can actually safeguard maintenance into the future and their sustained uptake as well. So what we would like ideally is to also have finance institutions or insurance companies take account of the value of nature-based solutions and integrate them into their practices, roadmaps, risk assessment schemes. And then last and obviously but not least, and this is where the whole link to today's webinar is emerging, we also want to reach the general public. The general public is very important also in co-creation activities, taking care of solutions, for example, urban farming. They can be included right from the design stages already. And here a very strong focus is also on schools, primary and secondary education, as well as universities, and community champions that spread the word and that actually are encouraged to set action and to put things into practice. So this is actually where Network Nature comes into play. Network Nature is both a project as well as an online platform. that we have created with OPLA, together with OPLA, and it should be a one-stop resource really for everything related to nature-based solutions, and for all these different target audiences that I've just showed you, to create awareness, to also spread the knowledge that has been generated so far, and in the end also to enhance uptake of nature-based solutions by these different sectors. So what is basically our plan? Our aim is mainly to kind of gather what knowledge has been produced so far on nature-based solutions and share it with the different target audiences, but also to reach out to new ones, those that are not yet so engaged, maybe not even yet so convinced about the use of NBS and the value that they have to them. And also we want to raise awareness for the value of nature-based solutions in people's everyday lives. So what is it really? How do nature-based solutions connect now to my reality? Which problems can they help me address? And how do I tackle them? These are all questions that should be addressed, and this is also what we actually want to provide you with today, with a few ideas. How can you actually inspire the younger generation to get active? How can you inspire them to become community champions? So we've got a few resources, and as I said, these resources are mostly coming out of different EU-funded projects, but it's really a very broad array. Projects work in very different areas with regards to nature-based solutions, also a few common ones. But as all of you, as I've seen, are coming from different fields as well, I tried to spread out and balance as much as possible the research that I'm presenting here. Also for you to know, there are hyperlinks under each of the text portions here that you see underlined. So you can directly go there by clicking on it. And I give you a brief overview. We won't be able to go into those in detail, but you can then check out at your own pace later on. A very good resource actually that gives a very general overview that is very accessible actually and easy to read is the Nature-Based Solutions Handbook. It starts with actually outlining the concept overall. What is the concept behind nature-based solutions? What are the core benefits that they provide? And also, how do we actually go about implementing them? So how do we start with the ideation phase? How do we get the different stakeholders together to really co-create? How do these design, planning, and implementation phases look like? But also the policy landscape, so connecting it actually, how does that now relate to European policy, for example? And then another resource that you all well know, I think, by that time, but I wanted to focus on it here as well, is the Urban Nature Atlas. It's a quite practical tool actually for exploring different cases. It has, if I'm not mistaken, 1,000 NBS cases across Europe. And the good thing is that you can actually filter them by different categories. So you can actually look at which might be the nature-based solutions that are closest to your problem or closest to your local idea of what you want to do. And you can also filter them according to the different challenges that you want them to tackle. That could, for instance, be to capture carbon, or it could be to act as a water sponge because you want to tackle rain problems, for example, when there's excess water, or also health. So there's a variety of options there and a variety of cases you can actually explore in depth and use also for your lessons as practical examples. That's a more recent activity. The second one is also a MOOC that has been created by this project that is called Naturevation. And I think it has just started now in January, so it's open for everyone. It's a Coursera course, and it provides a lot of background resources and information as well. It has educational films that you might be able to use afterwards, so it might be worth checking out as well. Focus areas are governance arrangements. That's what we call, in the largest sense, when different stakeholders collaborate together and manage nature-based solutions and also design them and plan them. Also business and financing models, but also ways to engage citizens in that process. Another more general resources are the Good Planet Foundation. They are partners in Belgium for educational activities in schools, and they have gathered a lot of practical examples what you can do, what kind of educational activities can you do directly in your classroom with your class, and it might be a worthwhile, valuable resource of inspiration for you to check out as well. And it also has a video section. Then another very good resource, Nature for All. And this one provides in different languages, English, French, and Spanish, and also German. One is upcoming. All kinds of toolkits, really, like with practical instructions about how you can apply them in a school setting, publications, videos. But it also, for example, has what you see here. It's part of almost a trivial pursuit for nature, where you can test actually your knowledge about ecosystems, nature, and biodiversity. There's a few other resources that are also quite valuable to have a look at and check out. One of them is one of the early projects. It was called Green Search, and what they did is actually they developed a board game, and I find it really great because this is a way actually of letting your students assume another role. So basically, all the different players would take on a role of a particular stakeholder that is usually involved in implementing green infrastructure in a city. So that could be a local authority, that could be a business, but it also could be a gardener, for example, or everyone that is needed for implementing these services. And they put themselves into the perspective of that particular stakeholder and explore while playing actually what the different values are that nature-based solutions can provide to that particular stakeholder. And also what it is worth to him, because there's also money involved and token cards. This is a board game. We've got a few editions in our office actually that we would be willing to give away if there is interest. So please just let me know after that webinar in case you have interest. You can get in touch. Another very good toolkit that has been established by UNALab is a toolkit for co-creation. So basically, as I already outlined, very often it starts from the very local level. So you start with an idea or you start with a problem. So what is the problem of my particular space? If that's a school garden or your private garden. Okay, I've got problems with flooding, or I've got problem with water scarcity, for example. Based on that, you would then see what is your problem and you would select a suitable nature-based solutions to be implemented to tackle that problem. And that's a whole ideation process if you do that obviously with other people together, and it needs to be managed in a way. And there are certain tools that you can use actually to structure those activities. And I think they have really done a great job in putting together a toolkit with all kind of different instruments that have templates, and they explain in detail how you apply a method and how you actually do that in a co-creative manner with other stakeholders. So it's worth a look. For those of you that are more representing the STEM subjects, it might be interesting also to learn a bit more about the technical background of some of the nature-based solutions, so the engineering, the design features and design criteria. And here there's also loads of information around. I've picked out here two that I find quite accurate and good. The one is the Technical Handbook of Nature-Based Solutions created by a project called UNALab, which is easily accessible actually under this link. They look very much into the design criteria of nature-based solutions to tackle climate and water resilience. So that can be water scarcity, but also too much water in any sense, and other climate-related impacts. There is another one around that has been created by Ecologic, which is a research organization in Germany. It's also a very nice book, actually, in the catalog almost, because with a lot of images, actually, that can help you zoom in a bit more nature-based solutions that help climate mitigation. That means carbon capture and carbon storage. There's other resources, and I'm just going to briefly go into this because I think I'm going over time already. On nature-based solutions, financing is a very big topic, actually. Why is that? Because with all these different stakeholder or multi-stakeholder arrangements that you have involved in design and implementation, you also need to find suitable financing mechanisms, and not only financing your the implementation of an NBS, but also financing the future maintenance. They often need maintenance, and that's a tricky point to kind of uphold them into the future. And here there's a quite good resource actually, which some of you might know, the business model canvas. It has been adjusted to be more suited to nature-based solutions and turned into an NBS business model canvas. And it's also accompanied by a guidebook that explains it step by step how you can guide through your students in filling in the different portions and in what sequence actually. And that can really help you actually get a first grip of what it is, what could be the underlying business model for your particular solution that you want to implement. A similar tool, very good, maybe one step before the business model canvas, is a business model puzzle. It's an interactive game, and it has instructions, and it can be downloaded and cut out actually with your scissors to be used offline. It starts from as well the type of NBS you want to implement, exploring the values it creates for different stakeholders, environmental, social, but also economic values that can be, and then exploring how or which actors would be willing to pay for these values that nature-based solutions deliver. And they have come up with 8 business models based on the research they have been doing in this project. And then in the third step would basically be to explore which one of the 8 business models could be suited to your endeavor. Then another issue that is very important actually is measuring the impact. So we actually want to know, do these nature-based solutions really also deliver on what we want them to deliver? So do they really tackle climate change impacts? Can they store carbon? Can they act as a water buffer, and so on? And here a quite good resource is a knowledge repository and evidence repository almost of the multiple benefits that are delivered. And here the focus is on green roofs, green walls, sustainable drainage systems, green spaces, and street trees. And here you can see that it gives you actually the type of evidence. So it's really, it gathers all kind of evidence that can be found that proves that this impact is actually achieved, and how this was proven, and then gives you also like graphs like the one on the right side. So that can be quite useful in depicting the impacts and playing around with them as well. A similar tool that is only in construction now is from another project. It's called Nature for Cities, and that is a knowledge and assessment platform. Coming up here are several tools that they will provide for free to perform this impact assessment across socioeconomic and environmental factors. So that's to keep an eye out actually into the future, and I can provide you with that resource once it's online as well. This is it from my side, and there is more to follow actually now from Jonathan, who will go now a bit deeper into the Network Nature platform. All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, hello, thank you, Bettina. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I've been seeing you saying hello in the chat, and there's people from all over Europe, so really pleased to see you all virtually on this meeting. So yeah, as Bettina said, I'm going to take you through some of the information that's available via the Network Nature platform and OPLA, and give you a few case studies, a few examples of some actual nature-based solutions that have been carried out with schools, because hopefully that will give you some good ideas about how you can bring nature-based solutions into your own schools. Excuse me. So yeah, as Bettina has already given you a great overview, there's a huge amount of innovation going on across Europe in nature-based solutions, and that's as part of a global community, really. So it's not just in Europe, there's also a lot of activity in Latin America, particularly, also in China. So, you know, nature-based solutions really is a growing interest across the world. So teaching young students about nature-based solutions really sort of equips them to be part of a global community. And a lot of the research in Europe has been funded by the European Commission through the Horizon 2020 programme, which is the research framework for the last 7 years, sorry. And then the next one that's about to start in 2021 is Horizon Europe. So there's a lot more research planned in coming years as well. And as part of those research projects, there's a very vibrant community of innovators working on nature-based solutions. So this shows one of the project meetings for Connecting Nature, but all of those projects that Bettina's outlined have a huge network of researchers around them. So you can interact with these people as well. I'll give you some links later on where you can find this community. So you'll probably find there's researchers working in your country that you can get involved with, and I'm sure pleased to hear from you to interact with them and find out what research they're doing and how you can learn about it. So OPLA, I work at OPLA. We provide a number of functions, but a key one is the EU Knowledge Repository for Nature-Based Solutions. So essentially we provide a sort of a website that allows all of these outputs from all these European research projects to be stored. And we're also one of the team that's working on Network Nature. So as Bettina mentioned, Network Nature is a new web platform that's specifically focused on nature-based solutions. And that web platform has been built on OPLA. So a lot of the resources that have been presented to you in the following few slides, you can access either through OPLA or Network Nature. So I've noticed quite a few have already signed up on OPLA as part of joining this course. We've had a lot of teachers joining, so you're very welcome to join, and we hope that we'll be able to provide a lot of resources for you going forward through OPLA and Network Nature. So one of the key aspects of the web platforms are case studies. So these sort of provide examples of how nature-based solutions have been already applied around the world. As you can see from this, this is a screenshot of the interactive map. There's a real focus in Europe. Obviously, there's that 222 is sort of spread out across Europe. But that's because obviously the focus of these cases has been on Europe. But you can see there's also a lot of good examples already, particularly from Brazil, but other cases around the world as well. So it's a good opportunity to teach children.
Jonathan, I'm sorry to interrupt. But there seems to be a slight issue with the sound, and the participants are reporting that they cannot hear you very well. Will it be able for you to speak up a little bit, please?
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Unfortunately, there is a slight buzz that we could hear.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
I think we can hear you slightly better now. Yeah, I think it's better now. Thank you. Please proceed.
And shout a bit. So sorry about that if you're having trouble hearing. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's these case studies from around the world. A lot of the case studies are focused on cities. So you have examples here you can see from several European cities, and these provide an overview of how nature-based solutions have been applied in those cities. There's also several examples already of nature-based solutions of how they've been applied within schools. These case studies can provide inspiration for your own schools and how you might apply nature-based solutions. And you can also share your own experience by creating your own case studies on OPLA and Network Nature, so you can share your experience as well. You can access all these case studies via OPLA or Network Nature. So the first case study I'm going to talk about is sustainable drainage systems in Sutton Schools, London. This was a project carried out by the South East Rivers Trust, who submitted a case study. And this is all about creating sustainable drainage systems within school sites. And the focus of this is on reducing flood risk and providing benefits to participating schools, whilst also educating the pupils at the schools and the wider communities about surface water flooding. So how have they done this? They've done a lot of engagement with the schools. So they've done staff surveys, staff meetings and interactive mood boards to think about how the staff can help plan this. Then they've run a range of sessions with pupils, and that's included school assemblies, lessons, and also design input sessions, and of course planting days as well, where the kids have actually got out and helped to plant these nature-based solutions. They've also been special projects that have included animation project to help them engage with their community and directly contribute to the development of the SUDS. And they've also engaged with the wider community, so through having school fairs, local festivals, and awareness projects to garner wider support for the schools projects. Now I know that there's been a question that's come in through the question and answer session about how you can involve younger children, and in this project they've done a really nice YouTube video which was produced by the schools, and this is a really nice way of getting younger children involved. So it was produced as sort of a flipbook animation, so the kids all sort of storyboarded it and then then drew out the different themes, different sort of scenes within the video, and then that was animated to produce a really lovely video. So I'll share that video in the chat after this talk, and it will also be made available to you afterwards as well. So it's a really nice example, I think. So another example of a nature-based solution, this is in Paris, the Cider School, and this was a refurbishment of the school. So this was an ecologically and participatory approach to actually sort of refurbish the school. And what they tried to do was to try and make the school more ecological and really engage all of the school community when carrying out that refurbishment. And the aim of this was to really contribute to the sustainable development and well-being of the children and the educational community. So by both teaching the kids about the sort of development of the refurbishment, but also through helping them to get involved in the design process. So what did they actually do as part of this? So they held a lot of workshops and community consultation with the school children, the staff and the wider community as well, to make them full stakeholders in the refurbishment. They tried to create design that reinforced the ecological networks as part of the wider district, so really linking the school into its wider community. They developed an ecological building that that was really favourable for biodiversity, and then they also tried to redesign the surroundings of that building, so removing the impervious paving, so to make the surfaces more permeable to water, so that obviously is good for reducing flooding, but also for draining water into the ground to deal with water scarcity as well, and also to create more green spaces and vegetable gardens as part of this refurbishment. So that led to a sort of a much more sort of ecological school that led to a greater engagement in those issues. And the last example is urban canteens in Ransatou. And this is really sort of trying to sort of connect a school into its wider community in how the food is supplied into the school canteens. And this was done to try and increase the amount of urban food production to supply the school canteen, also to support the development of a local food network, so part of the sort of the wider growing network of growers around the school, and also to improve the environmental education of students in the wider community. What did they do here? They developed a new urban farm, and they it actually affected the planning in the local municipality to try and increase the amount of urban food growing as part of this urban municipality. And this urban farm is now a success, and it's partly financed by the family's contribution to the canteen, but also from the municipality itself. So just a few examples there. You can learn about as I mentioned already, there's a great community that's sort of growing as part of Opera and Network Nature. So you can join that community and find out sort of people that are active in your country and find out what they're doing about nature-based solutions. So here's a link there to join the community, and you're very welcome to get involved. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you both to you and to Bettina for sharing all the resources. I must apologize for the inconvenience with the sound. I hope that our participants were able to follow what Jonathan was saying. If not, we will share the slides tomorrow, so hopefully you will be able to fill in those gaps in case you missed something what Jonathan was saying. Also, we will share the recording tomorrow, so hopefully you will be able then to rewatch it and fill in those gaps. Also, feel free to post some questions here for our speakers. If you have, we will try to answer them at the end. And now we can go back to our last speaker for today, Simone.
Yes, so quick test for sound to make sure it's working well.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Oh.
Just we don't see your presentation yet.
I'm starting to share. Oh. Okay, so you should see it now. Can you still hear me?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for being here. So after these two presentations that were a lot of resources, we thought that we could present something that was possible to do just tomorrow if you go out. So it's nature observation as a nature-based solution. And I'm Bénateau from the National Museum of Natural History in Paris. And I'm mostly working on citizen science usually. I will not talk about it today, but this is one way to maybe go further in the subject I'm going to talk today. So the first start for this, what I want to show you is that we are experiencing now a loss of nature experience. So it means that less and less children are exposed to nature. And here is a publication with some numbers that are just from 20 years ago and maybe 10 years ago. And it shows that less and less children are going to the mountain, seeing trees, fishing, catching insects, bird watching. So these are experiences where you can see nature, you can understand nature, and if you want to implement nature-based solution, you need to know nature as well. So it's to our mind here in the museum, we think that reconnecting the children to nature is one of the solutions to make sure we can implement this nature-based solution, and that's why I'm really promoting observation first. The other thing is that teaching ecology is difficult. So it's a complex and quite recent concept, even though we are talking about it a lot and it gets a lot of attention now. It's still very recent. And it also seems to be a distant program most of the time. When we think about the problems in ecology, for example, we think about polar bears around town, and it's very far away. It's nature that the children will not see in their local environment, and even the biodiversity in their local environment is endangered, and problems arising from global warming, from expansion of urban area are present in the local environment, and that's why we're promoting observation of biodiversity, which is actually close to them. So this biodiversity, it has to be easy to observe. So here are some examples that are, I'm sure you've already seen these different species, and they are present in urban area. They are well distributed locally, and for the whole Europe, I think we can see these different species. So it's very important that we see that even in urban area, you can see a lot of species. I was today in Paris for a small course, and we saw more than 10 different species of birds, a lot of different plants as well. So it's really something that you can observe, and you can see that there is nature. You can present nature and make sure that the children, when you talk about nature-based solution, they know what the nature inside this nature-based solution is. So how to observe biodiversity and how to make sure that it's meaningful for them. So we have different protocols that we developed. They are meant to usually collect data. But here I'm proposing you to just apply this protocol for observation without this data part, and it's just going in the wild. It's just outside of your school or even in your courtyard for some of the protocols in urban parks, and follow pollinator, earthworms, snails, birds, plants. Also, you can follow bats using recorders or lichens. And I'm going to give you a small example of the protocol, and maybe just to show the difference between just going around outdoor and really be an observer and follow. Really following a protocol will help you to really see that biodiversity is present, because if you just go around, you will probably think that if you're in I'm still in the birds, you just go out and you will just think, okay, there's just pigeon in my city, or maybe there are also some sparrows. But if you spend time at one point and count really the individuals and choose a spot where you stay, you will find nature that usually you don't see, and that usually children don't see. So it's important to stay a bit longer than what you would stay usually. So we say, when I say longer, it's just 15 minutes. It's not too long. It's just in the class. It's totally compatible with classroom time. And then usually we propose to use feeders as well, just in winter to aggregate the birds. So it doesn't promote biodiversity, it just aggregates the biodiversity that is around. Use binoculars, but these are materials that are not so expensive and that most of the people still have usually. And then it's possible for example for this protocol to participate year-round. For other protocols, we give advice to when to observe the different organisms. For example, plants, it's easier to identify when they have flowers. So I will send the resources and you can have access to them. Of course, it comes with training and the need to learn how to identify species. Here you can rely on usually local association to preserve the environment. They have very good resources, so I'm not giving. So we have our resources that are translated in English. The species list is still for France, but a lot of the common birds are very widespread. For example, so just for the birds, but the same for the plants. We have species that are well distributed on Europe, and you can still use it as a base and add the species that you don't have in your that are not in the program. So what is the effect of this observation on children, and why can we really think the observation is a nature-based solution? That observation of nature so strongly increase interest of the children to local biodiversity. So what we have done is we took survey of different schools that were participating to this kind of pedagogical activities and other schools that were not. And here you can see two drawings, and so it's not so clear, but two drawings that were done by two children that are representative of the ideal garden. And then we counted the element of nature that were present in both gardens. So one of the it's just how they see the future and how they may want to implement nature-based solution as planting trees inside cities to reduce the temperature of the cities. It's how they can build refuges for species, or if they want just to change the environment according to what they want. So, for example, here build a recreational area for bikes. And the other thing is that we still were controlling for also what they were doing outside. So also just doing frequent outdoor activities was increasing the awareness of environment as well. So it's just not only observation of nature, but just being outside. But observation of nature, being outside, is definitely something that will promote nature-based solution. So then, for example, if you are in a school, here is a map from the school. You can use the data that you collect from the observation as well to deploy some nature-based solution. For example, here we have 3 feeders. On the first feeders, you see it's on concrete. You have only 1 species. The feeder 3, it's with some bushes and trees, and you have more species, and also more on individuals of each species. So, of course, it's interesting first to see how biodiversity is responding to human pressure, but also it will help you to know where to focus the implementation of nature-based solution, for example. So here, I'm sure you can imagine a lot of possibilities to increase, for example, biodiversity. So just this part, just increasing terrestrial biodiversity, is something that is interesting. But also with all this concrete that you have on the school, in case of heat waves, it's really really hot, and it's to fight global warming. For example, you can imagine having more vegetation on this, and very easy ways to promote biodiversity is just to promote wilderness, and this was already said by other speakers. The idea is just very simple. You just take a green area in your schoolyard and you just let it go. You just won't do any intervention on this part. You stop doing landscaping on this part, and you will see that the plant biodiversity will increase a lot. Also, using different space to build new habitats for species is possible. Develop green roofs, as I said just earlier, will help preventing the high temperature and will help also creating new habitats for biodiversity. So I'm very focusing on biodiversity. Other presenters were also presenting something that was more broad in terms of nature-based solution. But I do think that observation and being in contact of nature can really promote and is a first step to be able to welcome the nature-based solution a lot more and to think about it, to create also other nature-based solution, and that's how you can really participate. Also, it's available for all levels of children, from kindergarten to high schools, with different ways to make them involved in these programs. Just knowing what nature is at the beginning, and then really involve them in the decision of making nature-based solution and where they should be done in the schools, for example. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Simon. I have here a comment that I would like to share with you. So we received a comment that they're thanking you for your presentation, and they said that they totally agree that it's necessary to reconnect our students with the natural world in a real way through the really old live observation experiences. So I think we can all agree with that. I also found it very interesting In one of the first slides that you shared, that we can see the drop in students engaging in these activities in nature, like fishing or bird watching, but the numbers were from 1998, I believe, and 2009. So I wonder, because it's from
Yes.
12 years ago, I wonder what would be even the reality today in 2021. Is it still
Yes, so
going down?
I haven't read really how the trends are. I wouldn't be like optimistic on the trends, of course, but I don't have the data, so I cannot really answer to this. But one thing that makes me not optimistic at all is the time that children spend on screens, and that we have data on it, and it shows that they're spending more and more time on screens, which is probably a good way to evaluate
Indeed.
this.
Indeed. Well, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you to all three of our speakers. I think we only have time for maybe a couple of questions. We collected some questions prior to the webinar, so I would like to actually start with Bettina. So we received a question for you, and the question is, can you please tell us more on citizen engagement on NBS and how to ensure their inclusivity?
Mm-hmm. So actually what we've seen, basically nature-based solutions lend themselves quite a lot because they always respond to a very local problem, you know, that is usually defined by the people that are going to implement, or ideally, I would say, right, defined by the people that are going to implement a certain nature-based solution. So that is really the starting point, actually, drawing in any kind of people as early as possible into the decision-making process as you can, so that they actually feel represented and that they feel that they have a say. And that they're also part of the solution, and not only when it comes to communicating, but also kind of hands-on experience, really implementing it, and where is it going to be placed? What is the problem that we wanted to tackle? So we have quite some experience when it comes to certain districts. So most of the nature-based solutions in some projects, for example, refer to activities in a certain district. So what we do usually, we have what we call this multi-stakeholder constellation. So we've got partners from research, we've got partners from citizens and also citizen associations representing citizens of different walks of life. And we also collaborate a lot with local authorities. And what we do there is really, in a workshop setting, first start with the visioning and ideation exercise. So what is it exactly what we want to address? And this is what I want to say, actually, that the earlier you can bring in citizens, the more they will feel that they actually have a share and that they have an ownership in what you're going to implement, and that will also inspire them to contribute. And another thing is actually that it should be an activity that is close to their reality. So it should be something that actually interests them, you know, that is part of their lives and part of their everyday trouble, for example. So it's very easy. Engagement activities could be like urban farming. So they have like direct produce that they can take home, that they see grow, that they can, you know, that dig around the soil and grow vegetables, for example. Or another example is, for example, you know, grassland with stretches, pollinator-friendly stretches. So they would select together what kind of seeds can you grow, what kind of plants can you grow, which ones are local and native, actually, ideally, to attract pollinators. And they can directly see the result then later on. So these are all things that are important. Let me see if I've got any other point I'd like to make? No, I think that was it. And also reaching citizens through intermediary organizations, you know, or if you have an activity going on in the school, the closest what you would do is basically trying to get to parents and also to relatives, right? To let them do it together. Yeah, that's my advice.
Yes, thank you very much. That's exactly the approach that we are advising our teachers to take with their students, to try to relate this to their everyday life, and only that way we can motivate more people to join. Thank you very much. We have a question for Simone here from the chat. So first of all, they thank you for your presentation, and then they ask, how can children be encouraged to get closer to nature on a daily basis? What can be some behavioral changes we as teachers can promote for a sustainable lifestyle?
So I really think that just showing the biodiversity is enough. Actually, just making them go outside and then showing them the variety of organisms that are around. So we have a lot of teachers that say that after they started to explain what are the different birds, what are the different plants, they have children that comes and say, okay, I've seen this, what is it? And it's just that through this question, you can really see that the children are engaging in the observation. Then the other thing is to really do this as a scientific activity as well. You can start to ask questions. Where are the birds? Why are they here? And it's just promoting curiosity of the children, and through this you can really start thinking about it. And it's also a good way to initiate the work on NBS, because from this question it's really what Bettina was saying, is really, if it's local, if it's their own question, it will be easier for them to get involved. And without this involvement, it's impossible to make it work. So yes, I think this curiosity and just presenting this is a way to go, to me. Yes,
totally agreed. Always going back to relating to our own lives, to our everyday lives, and to what's surrounding us. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Many thanks again to our excellent speakers today, Bettina, Jonathan, and Simone. You shared so many wonderful resources, very useful. I cannot wait to see all the learning scenarios that our course participants are going to prepare after hearing you talk today. Reminder for our course participants that we will share the recording together with all the slides tomorrow, so you will have opportunity to go through all the resources that we shared with you today. I saw that Jonathan already shared the video. There was a demand for the video. In the case you missed it today from the chat, everything will be available in the slides tomorrow. I will also just like to remind you that next week on Monday, we start our last module, Module 4. We will also start with our final assessment, peer assessment activity, where you will submit your NBS learning scenarios, and you will also peer review your colleagues' work. I'm sure that you will all do great work. You have so many resources shared with you today that I'm sure that you will come up with excellent learning scenarios. So thank you all for joining us today. Special thanks to our speakers. Special thanks to Diana, who was supporting us here in the background. And I hope to see you some other time, and I hope to have many of you participate in the final module and in the final activity. I wish you all a nice evening. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us. It was really a great opportunity. Very exciting for us too, I think.
Pleasure to
and
have
good
you.
luck with your assignments. Thank you.
And thank you very much for the organization as well. It's a lot of work. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much from me as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to have you, and I think we all learned a lot from you today. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Bye.